I'd like to invite on stage Oana Goga, who is going to first define what fake news are and tell us about her work.
Thank you. So I'm a research scientist at INRIA, and my research focuses on AI safety and analyzing risks with online platforms. Now, that can be very wide. It can go from disinformation and fake news to protection of children to auditing algorithmic manipulation and security and privacy. Probably you all have heard the headlines that social media is ruining our democracies, that algorithms are trying to manipulate us, and that fake news is everywhere. So some of these things are true, some of these are exaggerated, and today I'm going to show you what the data actually tells us. So before going into the findings, I want to set up the stage because understanding how users are getting informed is actually the base of understanding what are the risks. So sometime before the middle of 20,000s, before social media, users used to get information by directly going to a website or buying a newspaper. And what we call this is like selective information exposure. Yeah, users have the agency in deciding what news they go and read. And typically, these news were curated by someone from the TV or the news agency. Now, in the mid-2000s, this changed with social media, and all of a sudden we are moving from a paradigm where it's selective information exposure to incidental information exposure, meaning that users are just passively going online and without controlling, they are exposed to information. And now, the information you are going to get exposed on social media, it's actually decided by algorithms and friends and not by a journalistic curator as it was before. And the recent survey in the US, they were saying that more than half of the US users are mainly using social media as their main source of information. So it's an important and big part of how we get informed. Okay, so when we talk about risk in the public sphere, there are mainly four things we talk about. One is the dissemination of disinformation online through social media. The second one is the emergence of filter bubbles or echo chambers. Then we have foreign interference and influence in these coordinated influence campaigns that can be mounted on this on social media. And finally, we have all this risk related to how easy it is now to generate content that is related to politics and news. Now, on a more conceptual base, it's important to make the distinction between the risks that are coming from platforms and algorithms. These are because the platform decided on a certain set of parameters that are inherent in their platforms and algorithms. And the other one is third parties, maybe malicious actors, that are using this design architecture for something specific that they want to be. It can be cybercrime, but it can also be there to spread disinformation and influence people. So we know that these risks are real, but the question is, what is the scale of these risks? And when I started to work on this topic of disinformation, I realized there is actually very little data about the scale of the risks. For instance, the most basic question is to which extent users are exposed to fake news. And we don't know. And the reason that we don't know is that online platforms, they are closed, and it's very hard for us or from other auditors to understand what users are actually seeing when they go online. So to be able to tackle this, and what we proposed at that time, which was a bit crazy, it was to actually to design an infrastructure that allows people to donate private data to science. In the same way that you are donating blood for hospitals, we were asking people to donate their private data, so that we can finally see what is happening and have some actual numbers. So we deployed this tool that we built, Check My News, in the US before the election. In Brazil before election, we had about of 1,000 users in each campaign, and this is the findings that we extracted from this data. So basic question: how much disinformation people actually see? So what we saw is that 60% of the news-related posts people see are coming from factual sources, and 5% are coming from sources that are known to have spread disinformation in the past. The rest, it's unknown or it's mixed. So what we see is that misinformation, it is there, but is not the dominant source of information. And the majority of the information that people see, it's actually factual. Now, you could argue that 5% it's a lot. What I'm arguing is that this is a data point in time, and it's interesting to see how this evolves across time. The second question is that I, as a computer scientist, I'm most interested in it, is to which extent algorithms are playing a role in exposure to disinformation. And for this, we need to understand what are the mechanisms behind information exposure. So first, when you go on your social media, you can select who to follow. So this is a form of selective information exposure. Then the news-related post can come from the network, from your friends with whom you choose to be friends. Then we have algorithms that are purely recommending you content that might be interesting. And finally, it's targeted advertising. So traditionally, targeted advertising has been seen as, oh, here it's a pair of Nike shoes because you are interested in sports, but the same mechanisms can be also used to send information, political content or news, and we do see quite a bit of data that this mechanism is widely used. So when we look at what is the fraction of misinformation in these 4 categories, what we see is that users are more likely to see fake news because they chose to subscribe to sources that are known for spreading misinformation than to receive them because of algorithms or their friends. What I'm saying is not that the numbers are not strikingly different, but it's important to understand where you put the blame, and the picture is a bit more nuanced than just algorithms are promoting misinformation. The second question that we had is whether we do have filter bubbles. And we know all this media is presenting social networks like inducing people in filter bubbles. So we actually went and measured this. So for this, you have multiple measures of diversity, and what we chose, it's balance. Balance means that you have 1/3 of your information diet comes from the other source. So what we found is that if we look at the whole information diet of users, we have 35% of users that have balanced information diets. But if we exclude and only looked at what users choose to follow, it's 13%. So what we see is that users mainly follow pages that have a similar political leaning with them, but algorithms and the network are exposing users to a more diverse set of news. So now we talked about to what information users are exposed, but this is only half of the picture, and the other one is how users interact with this information. And again, we started with very basic questions. So the first is, do users check the information that they see before that they share? So whenever you see and you decided, oh, I'm going to share this, do they actually click to read the actual article before they share? And what we see is that only 14% of times users actually click and read the article. So most of the time, people are exposed to some news article, and then they decide to reshare it without even clicking and reading what it is inside. Now, on a more positive side, we also look at whether users are interacting with articles with opposing views. And this was a study done in the US. So you have Democrats and Republicans, and then you have left-leaning and right-leaning sources. And what we found out is that if we look at shares and likes, people mostly interact with the same, with congruent articles that support the same political leaning. But when we look at hidden interaction, meaning users actually going and clicking and reading the article, we see the other story. So what we see is that people, they do, whenever they have an article that comes from the opposing view, they don't share it, but they do and read it. Yeah, so this is one of the more positive findings that we had. Okay, so another way of looking at the problem is to compare how is the information on Facebook, on social media, comparing with the information that is outside of social media, meaning like you go directly to Le Monde, Le Figaro, L'Echo, these sorts of news websites. So first thing that we checked is whether Facebook is driving reading. And we thought that it could be a big fraction, but surprisingly, only 4% of all the news articles that people are checking are coming from Facebook. And this is surprising because on one hand, they are saying that Facebook is their main source of information, but on the other hand, they don't read articles that are coming from Facebook. So there is something strange happening there. The second question, is there more misinformation on social media? The answer is yes. We have almost 6% on Facebook, less than 3% outside Facebook. And does social media increase diversity? And the question again here is yes. Okay. So this, until now, we only discussed about what users read and how they interact, but the other part of the ecosystem is who is actually producing the news. And here, what we found is that we propose a method to automatically discover news pages and pages that are claiming to be news providers. And what we found out is that at least the ecosystem, it's at least 3 times higher than what it's currently known. So this is important for both research, but also for the public to be able to have methods that are able to discover the entirety of the news ecosystem, especially because in terms of follower and interactions, they are half of the picture. Now, while doing this study, we also observe, like here, it's the creation date of pages and websites that are talking about news. And we observed that there are these peaks just before elections. So the question was, is there any coordination that is happening? So we cooked up these clustering mechanisms that it's using a bunch of data. And we found out quite a bit of clusters where we already know some of them in bold that they are known for spreading misinformation. And we found other domains that were unknown, but they are clustered together based on our signals. Okay, so this is what we were today. So now, just before finishing, I want to end up with where we are going to be tomorrow, because there is a new shift that is happening, and it is more and more common, and we have evidence from data traces that people are using more and more conversational AI systems to ask about politics and about news. So this brings a whole new list of possible threats that ranges from what are some biases that language models have when presenting information, how can we audit these systems, what is their impact on the business model of current news organizations, and maybe not everything it's bad, maybe there are also opportunities for citizens to get better informed and understand better the political manifestos and the political policy that parties are proposing. Just to finish up with a call to action, so to design, to have safer online platforms, researchers need data to be able to audit them. So we are trying to build this European platform observatory that allows people to donate data on other platforms. And on my website, there is a link to a mailing list. If you want to help us out, please subscribe, and we are going to contact you when we are ready. Thank you.
Are there questions for Oana about her research before we proceed to the second talk? Any urgent question? Yes.
I had a question about the websites that deal with news that are created before elections and events. Did you monitor if they stay after the events, or they're just used for one event?
Yeah, there are many that they are just used for one event. There are some others that get reactivated when needed. And there are others that stay all the time present.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. So towards the end of your talk, you mentioned that you need at one point to audit the LLM used by people to get information about politics. Can you elaborate on this? What does that mean to audit an opaque LLM?
So for now, we don't know how users are using LLMs and what are the risks. So ideally, you would like users to give you data about the conversation that they had with their preferred AIs. You want to. There are two things. You want to understand user behavior, so that it's whatever you're doing, it's based on actual use. And then you have different auditing methods where you can artificially create prompts in order to test for biases. So two methods here.